Welcome to Hester Bros Cartoon Theater, everybody! I'm Alec, this is my brother Lucas. We are back with another relic of cartoon history, and that is an episode from the very first ever season of Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, the franchise which has so many more iterations now that we can't possibly name them all in one breath.
Alec and I both have a history with Scooby-Doo. We both love it, and I think we both love it for kind of different reasons. I'm declaring an intention to cover a lot of different kinds of Scooby-Doo shows. Like for Halloween, I want to do the 13 Ghosts. Like I actually liked a pup named Scooby-Doo growing up. So there's like a ton of Scooby-Doo content out there that I actually really enjoy it for different reasons, and there's a lot of philosophy behind it. So anyway, if you're here for Scooby-Doo, like I'm here for Scooby-Doo and Alec's here for Scooby-Doo.
Like and subscribe for
Scooby-Doo it.
Your comments help a lot with this one because we would love to be able to kind of, at some point, cover every piece of Scooby history, because this is the series where we do that. We are inducting Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, the very first series of the show, into our HBCT Toon Museum as of this episode, and we intend to do that with many more cartoons from history. So, let us know not only what your favorite cartoons are from Scooby-Doo, but everything. Old cartoons especially.
Picture a little hallway specifically dedicated to, like, gothic cartoons. Scooby-Doo is, like, one of the pinnacles of those.
Do you feel like Scooby-Doo gets its own hallway, depending on how many things we end up getting into?
You know, I was gonna say there might just be a hallway of Scooby-Doo. A hallway of Mickey? Disney? Mickey would get their own hallway? This is too complicated. Everybody else design the museum in the comments for us and we'll draw inspiration.
But for now, we are going to be watching episode 10 of season 1 of Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Bedlam in the Big Top.
And why did we choose this episode, sir?
Because this episode scared the absolute bleep out of me as a child. There, I saved you some time.
This episode scared the absolute out of me.
This clown dude, I had nightmares. I had a recurring nightmare, actually not even of this clown, but just a 3-second dream of a Scooby-Doo villain slowly creeping up on me, and then I would wake up in like a cold sweat, and it was terrifying. In real time, my awake hours, this is the villain that scared me the most. So I thought that this would be a fun one to rediscover and go back to.
Me too, for that same reason. For Alec's reason.
Lucas enjoys that.
I like things that scare people sometimes.
Great vague statement. Okay.
Yeah.
Off we go.
The music is one of the best things about Scooby-Doo. 100%.
Yeah, in these videos, we're going to talk a lot more about, like, the art and the nuance and the stuff that makes it stand out in history as an important piece, more so than a reaction to the show itself. But, oh, that clown!
Look at his eyes, dude.
It's the way it smiles is so menacing. Honestly, for 1969, this is way scarier than you would expect a cartoon to be that's for children. And a lot of these Scooby cartoons started off with a villain montage that would sort of introduce some story, and then the gang shows up like this.
Yeah, there was a form. Scooby-Doo wrote the formula for this. Not really.
They did. Sometimes the gang wouldn't even show up in the intro. It would just be a thing on the villain themselves. And maybe even sometimes it was the opposite. See, okay, and yes, we don't get stuff like that, just like a 15-second sequence of pure slapstick anymore.
Yeah, I guess you're right. We'll get more, like, not very long. We'll get more action sequences. Not that Cuphead isn't doing stuff like that, because, you know, they take a lot of inspiration.
It's true, and they still try to modernize it in a way.
Oh, dude, my back hurt looking at that.
Scooby is tough as nails.
Fun fact, everybody. I'm a circus guy. I spin fire and juggle and do stuff like that. I'm a performer, so this is also dear to my heart, kind of. Except for the fact that the origins of circus history are really messed up and awful and terrible for a million reasons, but we won't get into that. Now, I would just like to say, if I'm 16 years old in the 60s wearing a fine ascot, I probably would not, you know, investigate that further.
The laugh! That was the thing! But you're right, ascots, great. Underrated look. Oh!
That's the last straw. Tell me, what is this jinx anyway? This circus is haunted by a ghost clown.
I love when somebody tells the story about the ghost.
I totally just remembered that I literally was a clown in a haunted house.
I hope you weren't that scary.
I was very scary. I'll tell you the story off screen.
Mr. Barnstorm.
Good. Clowns now are way scarier.
No, it was really it was a scary time.
Like trapeze wires suddenly coming
Clowns are super scary.
You kids had better leave the grounds and go straight home. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Good night, Mr. Barnstorm.
See, there's always the person who tells them, oh, you should stay very far away from this situation. And most people think that was always the person that did it, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the person who gives the story is innocent. They just need a way to set up.
Wait, how did this happen?
And you will do.
Did they leave without Scooby?
You are brave, and that's a
Did they?
Scooby-Doo!
You're right, they were totally in the Mystery Machine and now they're over here. That's...
No sign of them. Let's check in this tent.
Hanna-Barbera was known for sloppy animation, I have to say, even though I absolutely love it. I love it more because it's sloppy, to be honest with you. But they would reuse scenes a lot. Or they would make accidental continuity errors in different sections. This is so classic. Also, and the music, like you said.
Oh, that's actually a little scary. You get a feeling of weight.
Where did he learn to do that?
Come on,
Wait a minute.
We've got to stop him.
Isn't this just like some guy? How did he get Scooby to do that? That's an actual power.
I mean, he's hypnotized. Hypnotism's a real thing.
Now you
That is a real thing, but there's limits.
There are definitely limits. But it's a
I
cartoon.
would say this may be a limit, potentially. I don't
The
know.
power of the ghost clown is great. You shall not work in this circus.
Now he's got yellow eyes. See, stuff like that.
Oh, the pupils going in different directions.
Ah, and the stars.
Scooby, be careful.
You know, it's funny because I was watching Owl House the other day and I was like commenting on it's so awesome how they have like different outfits and stuff like that. The things that I comment on with new animation are a lot more complex, but the foundations, like we're commenting on how amazing it is that they literally are just able to move their pupils, you know, and it's just because the context is so much different for the time, you know, because the animation standards were so much different. So there's, you know, they're doing a lot of things that were really incredible for the technology at the time. And I just don't want that to go misunderstood as being like, wow, look, they animated eyes, and everyone's looking at us like, okay.
Yeah. Well, but even now on the trampoline sequence. So, plausible impossible. I talk about this a lot. It's a Disney concept. Where it's, in reality, this would never happen on a trampoline, but it's realistic enough to where you can suspend your disbelief and imagining that happen in an animated world. And Scooby-Doo did a lot of that. So this is another good example. Like, look at how high up he's going. It's wild.
Yeah. Some would call it suspended animation.
Run, rolling, roll.
Oh, see, same thing. Balloons carrying him up.
Must come down.
And a dart bringing him down. A single dart?
That's right. Okay. It's, again, this whole sequence, technically part of the plot. We are seeing how threatening the ghost clown is, and eventually that they catch him.
Well, it's
but
a creative
lot of
action
it's for
sequence.
character moments.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I mean, a good action sequence does demonstrate character and not just fighting. And, oh, that was cool.
I should have known.
I didn't see that coming. But yeah, no, you get a lot of character from these guys. I mean, granted, the character's simple too, you know, but
you
get
sure.
it.
But listen, what's interesting to me, there is something about Scooby-Doo in particular that resonated with so many people as opposed to other Hanna-Barbera cartoons of the generation. Many of them are well remembered, but nothing became a franchise like Scooby has, right?
There's something different about Scooby, and that's that how many things it's really hard for I think a cartoon to manage like a gothic vibe like this and have so much longevity, because usually horror and sci-fi don't financially do as well.
But this is a lot of fun. It combines like a little bit of darkness with just humor. And something that I think is an interesting touch that people don't talk about a lot, there's a laugh track in a cartoon. That's a little weird.
It is weird.
But I think it is trying to throw in for levity. I think that's the idea, is if we have laughter, then we're showing, oh yeah, like there's some dark parts here, but this is for comedy.
Pay attention for a time. And soon your
I'm not saying I like laugh tracks, but I think it's very fun to see it as a part of history here.
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously they got rid of it for a reason. It's fun to see it as part of history.
But the idea was that they created this with the mind of it being a sitcom of sorts. you know, a sitcom cartoon. And the character, the dynamic of the gang, I think, is really what stands out and makes these special group of characters great, because they've been adapted in new ways, but they always stay to the same type of formula because they work so well together as a group. You know, and they tried to make Mystery Inc. happen in a bunch of other random mystery cartoons.
Oh, Mystery Inc. was so good.
Oh, the cartoon itself. Yeah,
the
Scooby-Doo
cartoon.
Mystery
Yeah,
Inc.
you just made me think of how good that show was. That might be one of my favorites, actually.
It might be the best adaptation of Scooby-Doo, quality-wise, but I still like digging back into the old stuff.
Yeah. Of course. I don't know, man. There's so much Scooby-Doo that I genuinely enjoy. Like, even stuff that I maybe, even at the time, might have known wasn't good, like the stuff with Scrappy. I think I still, not to call out Scrappy, not
I'm
that
a Scrappy fan.
Here she comes.
Wow.
I know, that's a whole video.
Don't unsubscribe because of that. I'll maintain the Scrappy hate for everyone.
I love Scrappy.
You know.
For the record, Lucas, we did get an outfit change here, with Daphne being hypnotized and ending up in, kind of,
a tutu.
Yeah, a tutu, I guess is the word.
Shaggy, Scooby.
Let's go.
I guess you're right, but... You're right, I mean, it was a costume change with purpose. I mean, doing regular costume changes would be, like, ridiculous.
This too, okay, same
and...
thing. Elephant trunk, you could just want... Also, this is terrible, don't do this to elephants. But the comedy of it for a cartoon of the plausible impossible thing is cool.
Oh my god, that chain. Set him free, Scooby. Be the hero. Change the plotline of the story. This is now about liberating animals from the circus.
Wouldn't that be a great ending?
That'd be such a great ending.
And look, the elephant helped her out.
Yeah.
Woke her up.
Yeah.
Daphne, you're okay now.
We'd better get over
People
there.
make jokes about, like, Shaggy being a stoner. And I'm not gonna lie, when I watched the original show, I don't think that was actually all that intentional most of the time.
I've thought the same.
Like,
You know,
I don't... There's so many jokes that they could do, and they never take them. Ever. I've never seen a stoner joke even remotely referenced in the original series.
I mean,
Call me
he eats
out
a
if
lot.
I'm wrong. Okay, he eats a lot. Okay, that's not a good example, but skinny people, you know, I don't think he has to be high for that. Scooby, dogs shouldn't get high, also, it's bad for them, very unhealthy.
And the fastest runner, that's who, Scooby-Doo.
Okay, and now we're getting the sequence where they're setting up the trap for the villain, which is also classic. Does it happen every episode? Yes, but always a little bit different.
That sprained ankle
Yeah.
work, Scooby. Anybody have a Scooby?
Scooby-Doo is one of the shows that does formulaic right. You know?
I agree, I had the exact same thought.
I talk badly about formulaic shows a lot. But I think that that's just because a lot of times they end up boring. But the reason you have a formulaic show is to create a lot of interesting concepts from it. You just use the formula to create a cool episode. That's what it's designed for. It's not formulas are bad.
Right.
Formulas are bad if the formula isn't interesting enough to have a spicy show. But when you have different monsters and all these cool, like, gothic scenes, you know, not saying that this formula doesn't get stale. I'm glad there are different Scooby-Doo shows, but, you know, it's a good formula for what it is.
It's excellent, yeah. And I mean, they've even kind of replicated this in new ways. What's New Scooby-Doo? 2000s. Same principle, a little bit more modern, but it was still the same formulaic thing, and it did really well. By the way, are you getting the same nostalgia from this that I am, by the way? I'm curious, because I'm 3 years older.
Oh yeah,
So
dude, I get
you remember
super
them too.
nostalgia.
It's like every Scooby-Doo episode, even though our generation is like a whole 30 years later, we still watched every single one on television. It wasn't just our parents, like, finding old tapes. Like, it was on TV. So, and I think some of these cartoons still get shown.
You know,
But-
I think that's one reason why Scooby-Doo has had so much amazing staying power. You just, like, made me realize it. Every generation grew up with Scooby-Doo, because there's always been one on TV. There's always been a new Scooby-Doo series since this. I mean, not always, but a lot of the time. So
And sometimes people still watch the old one.
yeah, well, and that's the
As
thing.
kids.
It's a show that, like, multiple generations can get behind. I feel like Tom and Jerry's almost a little like that too, because it's constantly
true.
been on network TV.
Definitely. And of course, there's some episodes now that are harder to show because they're outdated, and, you know, that's a product of it. Like, even now, obviously, it's probably not great to show the circus thing, even, I would argue. But you still are able to suspend your disbelief as a cartoon of the time, and it's not like...
I mean, just knowing context is important, you know? It's like when I watch, you know, like when I see this lion in a cage in a circus, I'm like, you know...
You don't think too hard about
genuinely, it. Well, it genuinely existed then, you know?
It did.
And it was problematic.
And all sorts of cartoons did play it for comedy, or they would. It wasn't considered something that was out of line to...
Yeah! And there's a million problematic things that go on in modern things every day, but it's not popular yet, so we won't know about it for another couple decades.
Well, that's a really good point about social nuance, right? Is what we can do when we watch these, you know, we can appreciate the parts of history that exist, but also be like, okay, but also circus animals should not be a thing, and that's you know, don't abuse animals, obviously.
Don't abuse animals. Actually, you know what's funny? That's a loaded term, because technically they probably wouldn't define their own behavior as abuse if they were abusing an animal, right? So how many people think like, oh yeah, I'm an animal abuser?
Now we'll unmask the ghost.
Oh, well, okay, I see what you mean, is that people don't even know they're doing it, but which makes it more effed up.
Don't justify beating animals with whatever system of justification you've put in your head to say that it's okay. That's the real deal.
Thanks, Mr. Philosophy.
Yeah.
So, the ghost got away, which I actually found a little bit different. A lot of the time the traps would work, and this is an example where they did break from form a little bit. It's like, oh shoot, I guess we're still looking, we failed.
Wow, man,
everywhere.
How did they not see him? That was not a big pole he was hiding behind. Oh, they did see him. Baited. The reverse bait.
You swing from trees like a happy chip. Watch the pretty coin of gold.
See, I love how ridiculous and cartoony this is.
Yeah. He just charms himself. That is some powerful hypnotism that dude's working with. Would you ever do a hypnotist show?
No. Actually, we had an opportunity. There were already enough people on the stage. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I like to be in control of my actions all the time. I don't mess with a lot of things for that reason, we'll say. So, yeah, definitely not.
I like watching it. I'm fascinated in how it works.
Cartridge, and it disappeared when he deflated it. Well, it was great.
You know, I like that they actually try to write in mechanisms for how the villains always do things. You know, like,
yeah, they really do.
Even though they don't really probably need to. That balloon in the back left, what?
Big surprise they have.
Yeah, it's just a Scooby balloon, which implies some level of fame, which is very funny.
Yeah, or at least self-awareness in the show.
Yeah. And in this case, to be honest with you, I remembered the circus master actually being the person in the clown costume. And when I said the thing about, oh, the person who describes it isn't always the villain, I was trying to not spoil people and say, oh, don't just assume. Turns out it actually wasn't him. It was this escaped circus carny who was not even in the episode. And you think Scooby's predictable, but sometimes it's not.
Man, some of their faces look kind of awkward.
So my fiance and I watched through the entire first 2 seasons, and I had her guess every episode who she thought the villain was. And her success rate was probably about 60%, which you would expect it to be more predictable than that. I was really interested to see that in the end.
Yeah, for a show that everyone oh yeah, the nostalgia blast at the end. But yeah, for a show that everyone makes the joke about how easy it is to predict. I mean, granted, you have like a 1 in 3 chance of guessing it. I don't know, you could have a situation where the character's not even in the episode, though.
Exactly, like this. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it does feel pretty obvious, but I think that different iterations, it was more obvious than others. Because they need to make it feel satisfying plot-wise to some degree, and if it makes no sense, then you're like, okay, they were the villain, but why? So, it's kind of a tall order sometimes.
It is. Man, the music in this show is so good.
I know, I'm just letting it play, I'm like,
I am too. I'm just like... I think one of my favorite things, and I think one of my biggest influences for nostalgia is actually music. And like, I remember the Austin Roberts songs, like I still play those. They're not on Spotify, tragically, but you can still find like the Scooby-Doo, you know, like you've got to love the world.
I mean, we actually talked ahead of time about trying to do an Austin Roberts episode, but all of those songs are in season 2, which had 8 episodes, and each one had one of the songs. We covered one of those episodes way back in the early days of HBCT. We did a Scooby video.
Oof, those don't look as good, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, if you start YouTube, you know that you start worse and then you get better. And that was a pre-reaction video, so if you want your own relic of history, feel free to check that one out at the end.
And if you're really fascinated of like the early Alec and Lucas working on stuff, we have unreleased videos that only members can access.
That is for the very first 5 that we ever made that nobody's seen except for members and certain select family and friends who helped us in the beginning. If you're interested in that, you know, and you're a fan of what we do here, that would help us a lot, and it might be fun for you too. So check that out, check out the perks, like and subscribe, and we will see you all next time.
Oh, and tell us your favorite Scooby-Doo series.
And villains.
And villains. Goodbye.
Goodbye.